Welcome to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. In this episode, we're diving into the relationship between the cost of coffee versus its flavor or quality. I think we've all been there where we decided to pay a little extra for a bag of coffee. We took it home, we brewed it, and it was, well, not nearly as good as we thought it would be, especially given the price tag that we paid for. And so that leads us to believe that cost is not always a good indicator for flavor. And so in this episode, we talk about the relationship there, plus what makes a coffee more expensive or a little bit more affordable, and how sometimes lower priced coffees can taste better than the more expensive coffees. Let's get into this. Let's just pour some batchy because this has been brewed for like 20 minutes already.
Oh, that's my fault.
As we've been talking, but I really want to try this. I'm curious how this is gonna taste because this is an interesting coffee. Ooh,
I was gonna say, I'm like, this kind of smells.
This is actually great for this episode title. Actually,
I mean, I gotta apologize to you and all the viewers. I have like mint in my mouth.
Oh, nice.
I think it's super nice.
Yeah.
Maybe
slightly a little under. I don't know. There's like a little bit of not astringency, but like sourness.
Yeah, it's slightly bright.
It's a little sharp.
Yeah,
but it's punching with flavor. Very intense.
The aroma is
very
really super good. Like tropical, nice. Yeah.
Some like candy, some fun like candy. Tropical, nice texture and mouthfeel.
Very nice texture, yeah.
Yeah, this is it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'm pretty content with this.
I don't know if stuff is getting into my head or what, but like I think today I listened to about maybe 2 hours of like coffee content stuff, like Lance, homies from Valor, like Cat and Cloud. And especially like stuff like that Lance recently posted about his preferences changing for, or not his preferences, but his recipes being slightly tweaked where he likes coffees that are less extraction.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have talked about this too. Yeah. But I'm like, oh, this kind of makes sense. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm reading too much into that because I listened to it for like 2 hours today.
For sure.
But I'm like, oh, and you've said this like a million times, like your scale of like, like what do you call acidity to bitterness? Or like with that scale, I'm like, oh, it makes sense why you or anyone would want to lean on that brightness, acidity side of things. It's just the dynamic of the coffee is a little more present. And especially with that texture and aftertaste. And Lance mentioned something about that he doesn't like his filters to be super strong, but have that delicacy more that reveals the nature of the coffee a little more. So,
yeah, makes sense. It's just slightly I think there's a little bit of bagginess on this.
Really? I
just a hair.
To me, it tastes like very punchy though.
It is very punchy.
Yeah.
Because this is
don't tell me it's
a very
natural.
process forward coffee. This is an anaerobic natural. Oh. So it's gonna be punchy. It makes sense.
Oh,
it's a fruit tropical bomb.
It is.
This also happens to be a coffee from Juan Peña. This is an Ecuador natural, nice. Anaerobic natural. It's actually the 3-pound batch that you roasted of that leftover coffee the other week.
That's wild.
Yeah. So this is a coffee that we dropped, I don't know what now, 5 months ago. It sold out pretty quick. We had like not that much coffee of it. We literally split it with a buddy up in BC, the green. And yeah, it was a fun coffee. Yeah. I tasted this actually and was like, this could go, I mean, you probably shouldn't put such a nice coffee in a blend, but I'm like, this would be exciting. Yeah. But yeah, this is a Juan Peña Ecuador Típica Mejorado. anaerobic natural.
Yeah.
Very nice for an anaerobic natural, to be honest, with given my preferences. It's very, very pleasing.
I
Little,
did save you.
baggy, but
I did save you some of that coffee at home.
nice. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And I
I'd
froze
like
some.
some.
Yeah,
Nice.
totally.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at
I
all
like it.
about this. So
Did
yeah.
you put it on a color reader?
This
Yeah.
yeah, this was like a 102.
Oh, that's not as light as a lot of our coffees, but it tastes very light.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
It doesn't quite taste as developed
Yeah.
for that color reader,
Yeah.
color reading,
Color
which is
reading,
interesting.
yeah.
Correlation there. But yeah, this coffee was not a cheap coffee to buy. I don't remember exactly how much we paid for it for green, but I know it definitely wasn't on the cheaper end.
Yeah.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, the bag was what, $25, give or
For an
take.
8 ounce, right?
Yeah, plus or
Retail.
minus, and which is not. It's not super expensive, but it's also not cheap. And something, I'm been trying to buy some coffees. I now like the amount of coffee that I go through and we go through at home now is like so much that I'm considering signing up for a subscription.
Whoa.
It's become very interesting because I'm stepping into the mind of somebody who like goes through coffee every single day.
Yeah.
We brew on espresso, and I'm like, subscriptions are starting to sound like they make sense now for me. But anyways, regardless, I've just been shopping a lot, buying some one-off bags here, and seeing the classic trend of coffees becoming more and more expensive.
Yeah.
It's crazy, actually. Before I think for a long time it was very popular to have 12-ounce bags. A lot of roasters had 12-ounce bags, which is 3/4 of a pound, and they were at $21
Yeah.
for like a nice.
That was still considered a.
For like a nice
expensive.
coffee.
I remember
that was
Velton-
that was
Yeah,
considered
Because
a
I
more
remember
on the
Veltons, you could buy a 12-ounce bag for like 18.
yeah. Yep. And so that was already considered like groundbreaking. $25 was already like a lot, Now, I mean, actually I don't know. A lot of the coffees that I've been shopping for are like 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26
Yeah, that's a lot.
plus, and they're all 8 ounces, which is just crazy to think. And so one might assume that, it's costing more, which means it's nicer coffee. Well, to a certain extent, that might be true, for sure. But to a certain extent, just because you buy an expensive coffee, that does not mean that it's going to be tasty. And I mean that regardless of like roast preference, just like on a green coffee, roasted coffee preference, like just because you buy $30 for that, for that tin or whatever, doesn't mean that it's going to be spectacular. There's a higher chance. But yeah, it's been very interesting to notice the upward trend of coffees getting a little bit more steadily more expensive.
Yeah, I tried to buy some September coffee last week. And I mean, it's wild to me to say that I couldn't afford it. It has nothing to do with September. I think September's pricing is in the ballpark of what is acceptable. I don't think they're
100%.
too expensive. I don't think September is like overpriced or underpriced. I think it's exactly where it should be. But like, one with like shipping costs, everything, it was like a $70 order. And I was like, I don't know if I can pull that off, And I'm trying to think. It wasn't like a lot of coffee. It was like maybe 2 bags or a bag, and it was shipping and everything. I was like, shoot, like I don't think, even though I really wanted the coffee, I ended up not pulling the plug on it. I mean, it's still in my cart, but I didn't pull the plug on it. And I think in general, like coffee pricing has like went up. Was it today that the C market was again at an all-time high?
No,
Or it was recently bumped up again because of everything that's going on economically with like, from the producing side with all the situations on that to like tariffs to just cost of production has went up in general. So
Yeah, and there's a few reasons for increasing costs, and I kind of want to break this down into kind of two categories because I think there's two variables at play here.
Mm-hmm.
There's like the economic, just pure business side to things,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's I think the which is probably what most of us are intrigued by is more the flavor side
Yeah.
to things. And so before we get to the flavor part, because there's a lot to unpack there as well, I do want to start with like the economic, the business side, which is to roast a coffee as a roaster, it takes resources, it takes time, it takes energy, it takes work. And so when you think about like when shipping goes up a little bit, when I don't know, maybe tariffs go up a little bit, or maybe cost of production at origin goes up a little bit, or you hired a roaster and minimum wage goes up,
Yeah.
or the cost of your packaging, your bags go up, the
Mm-hmm.
cost of labels go up, the cost of energy just to keep the lights on at the roastery, just to pay your utilities, or even rent. Like if you
Yeah.
move into a space, like we were just looking for a space, when you're calculating, you're like, oh man, like that's steep. And depending on where you are at in the country, in the world, that rent could be really high.
Mm-hmm.
That can be really low. And that will play into kind of how much you can push and pull those prices from like a roaster standpoint
Yeah.
without, shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah. Or without even considering the change in green costing, just putting that aside. And you and I have discussed a lot about the idea of the quote unquote Chick-fil-A model, where there's a lot of investment into securing the price for operations or the price to create a product. Like when it comes to big expenses, like are you going to rent or are you going to purchase? And I think depending on the coffee company, if you've been in the business for a little while and you were able to secure a location for 30 years, I'm not going to name the coffee company, but there's a specific coffee company that you and I know that was based out of Bellingham that has a tendency of securing a rent for like 30 years. You know what I mean? And that kind of creates some form of stability. So then when times change, like who would have known this? Like who would have known the economic situation 15 years ago?
Right.
But if you had rent like secured for 30 years, this situation wouldn't have impacted your pricing as much because some of your biggest expenses would be already quote unquote taken care of.
Yeah, for sure. And so that's I think throughout this conversation there's this like, again, you're playing the, I guess you're just measuring of like your price of the coffee, your bag of coffee that you buy to, I don't know, quality or preference or value that you get from the bag. And this is like a very interesting ratio to play on because they kind of have to be aligned somewhat. And as somebody who buys coffee, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, if I pay X amount, I want to be able to get some amount of enjoyment back. And interesting enough, like from a roaster standpoint, I'm like, well, if I'm selling a coffee, should it be priced this way? Am I providing enough value for it to be equally priced? And sometimes like, to be completely transparent and honest, like sometimes when we're dropping a coffee, I'm like looking at our sheet of like how much this coffee should be cost to keep like just proper healthy margins. And I'm like, man, the green and the quality of this coffee is getting overshot to where if I were to buy this for this price, I wouldn't feel like I'm getting the value that I'm getting, that I paid for.
Yep.
And sometimes we'll actually come back a little lower on the price point just to a place where I'm like, oh, okay.
That's stomachable. Yeah, there's not much
sense.
of a sticker shock.
Yeah. And maybe not as much like sticker shock, but more like I feel more confident knowing that if somebody pays this much for this coffee, it's going to bring a proper value to them.
Yeah.
But again, like that has to be balanced with like, man, the cost of normal things is going up to produce it, to roast, to manage, to pay for different things, where sometimes that the cost of production is increasing the cost of your coffee bag.
But the flavor notes stay the same.
The flavor notes stay the same. Yeah. That's the thing. The flavor notes stay the same.
Yeah.
I had I'm going on a long rant, but I had this conversation with a potential client, a client that I'd be pumped to have actually in town here. And we had a very interesting conversation because the main guy that I had a meeting with, he was very enjoyable. And then another guy seemed like he showed up that is probably a few steps higher than him and was like, how do you little guy compete with the big guy?
Whoa.
And I'm like,
Whoa.
I don't know if he's just having conversation. So I just like was like, hey, like this company X, Y, and Z, that's way, way bigger. Like they're after a different market. We serve clients that are looking for something else. You know, it's a little more peculiar to quality. The heavy emphasis actually on quality, and you know that's what they're looking for. So we're not going to cheap out and buy commodity green because that's not what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh no, like I want you to sell me on why we should go with you instead of the other guy. And I'm like, price point wise, he wanted me to battle it out with price point. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to be honest. There's no way you can beat that price point because the company is so big that they can be so vertically integrated. Or I think that's the word, vertically integrated, that they can almost crush anybody on price.
Yeah.
Because their shipping costs come down, their cost of production at some point comes down. At some point, again, this isn't like blanket statements, but like there's a lot of stuff that you win at being like a behemoth.
Yeah.
You know, like something I heard, read, like Amazon can get really insane rates from shipping carriers like USPS, FedEx, UPS, and stuff like that because they have so much more negotiating power. Holy cow.
Yep.
What carrier does not want to land the contract with Amazon, knowing that you will get tons of deliveries? And so I was like, after that conversation, I was like, that is just so interesting. That's just a very interesting like experience and to think about it. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, being smaller isn't always, there's perks. It's not always the best. And sometimes we can't go lower on a bag, on a cost of a bag because of just cost of productions and our means. Even though I would also say that like our cost of bags, actually, I was like, we're actually like a really good cost.
Yeah, especially wholesale.
For the cost to value, comparing with like others, I was like, okay, I'm content. I'm happy, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, thinking about Amazon, and also it's like, this might be a kind of a tangent, but like when Amazon can land Rivian for their vehicles, like there's a whole, like you said, there's a whole different power, what was the word you just used? Like negotiating power. There's a whole different ball game. And when it comes to like massive roasting companies that can offer coffee, and that's another thing. Lisa Farr has always said the word coffee has been so diluted that when you're talking about, COE, like Panama coffees, they're still coffees. You can't compare those, and it's not the same thing as like coffee from commodity grade Brazil coffee, sea market coffee.
Correct.
But when you talk to someone like that, possibly that business owner, they're looking at it from just a singular level. This is just coffee, right?
Yeah.
And when the negotiation comes down to price, it's like, well, yes, we're talking about the same word, but we're not talking about the same product.
Or the same thing.
Yeah. And like, if you're talking about one aspect of the product, we're actually not delivering that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where the whole idea of preference, that's the whole idea of like, what kind of flavor are you looking for? Like, do you care that your, like our bags actually like promote and talk about the producer, and the producer has value on our bag? When we put a producer's name, that is actually bringing value to the consumer, because the consumer knows that producer, they're purchasing our iteration of a producer's work, rather than if our bag label just said coffee.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a lot of those aspects at play. And those aspects also have to do with how we purchase green, how we source green, how we purchase green. That's more of a kind of a value proposition that we give when it comes to like, we want to work with coffees of this caliber, rather than we just want to, again, slap a label on that says you get beans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned the COE side, because I think, that's, everything we've talked about is just like logistics and business side. But then the other side is, to a certain extent, more expensive coffees are tastier.
Yeah.
Like, usually when we're sourcing coffees and we're ordering samples, if you see like Cedra, Geisha, that costs $15-$20 a pound. Yes, that there is a very good chance that it's going to taste good. Not always, but there is a very good chance.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason why it's being priced at that point. Probably because, not always, but probably because some Q grader tried it, or somebody on the sourcing team tried it and said, this is exceptional, and I could probably sell it for X amount, because I know there's a group of roasters like us that would be happily jumping on this, And so there is a quality standpoint for sure. Like, good example is like all the COE auction lots. That's an awesome opportunity for, producers plus COE plus roasters to say, yo, this is exceptional. You should be celebrated. You should be, what am I looking for? Rewarded for producing an exceptional coffee. And it's agreed upon that it's scored very, very well. And there is a lot of like, it's freaking good.
Yeah. And when you talk to Cole, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cole, I listened to the episode, and Cole was saying like, these producers, they're actually designating an amount of quality for this quote unquote competition. So they're actually putting intent into saying this coffee belongs in this market, or this coffee is for this this competition. And that's that intent in its own requires or demands a higher price. And whether you want to argue that's right or that's wrong, that argument doesn't really matter, because it comes down to the intent of why that coffee was put on the table. There is a risk and a reward thing. When a coffee producer is actually putting that stuff out, they're expecting like, okay, maybe we'll land here or there, and the price is dependent on how someone evaluates that coffee and then the auction. It's a whole different ballgame, rather than you just taking all of your coffee and just saying, hey, I just need X amount of dollars for it.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean just because they intentionally put it out there, it doesn't mean they should get paid more.
No.
It's like they're actually competing, and it's properly scoring, which is properly responding with them getting paid more in the auction. And at the end of the day, there is like, a supply and demand. Like,
I was gonna say that.
Like, hey, if you have like 50 pounds of this green that is like a 92 point coffee, there's probably a roaster on the face of the earth that would take that and enjoy it.
Yeah.
So if there's a limiting factor, we only have certain amount, and there's way more roasters battling for this little bit. Of course it's gonna, they're hunting, of course. And that's very fair. I mean, that's why we buy some of those competition lots, both as roasters or just as coffee drinkers, because dang, that Wilder Lazo Geisha there's probably like 3 roasters that have that geisha, and it's only going to come out probably like once a year, maybe twice, maybe 3 times a year, depending on how crop goes. Like, yeah, and you want to enjoy it.
Yeah. And the same is for the other side of things. We commonly know there's such a thing as blender lots, right? It's not a bad thing. Yeah. But we actually know that it's properly evaluated to go in a blend for a specific reason, to serve a specific purpose, to give specific value. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can't just, and at the end of the day, you can't just completely designate a single flavor preference to a single price, right? Just because it's for a blend, it's going to hit in a certain way that deserves a certain price. But just because it has a blueberry note and it's COE doesn't necessarily say that all blueberry notes cost X amount of dollars. Because flavor does have that. It's not flat across the board. Like no one's paying like, hey, if your coffee is cupped by a Q grader and it has floral notes, it's X amount of dollars. That's not how it works. But because geishas tend to carry these characteristics, they are a prized possession that deserve a little bit more of a price. And that comes down to also flavor. That's the other side of things. The cost of production, the competition side of things. But when coffees tend to taste this way, there's a certain demographic of roasters and coffee drinkers that are saying like, yeah, I'm willing to pay that. And there is that demand side of things.
And, going back to the geisha comment, and because people want, there's a high demand for it.
Yeah.
So it's not because, it has floral notes on it, not because it's a geisha. It's because, there's actually a lot of people that agreed, oh my gosh, we love coffees like that. And that will drive the cost up a little bit. Yeah. So to a certain extent, yes, cost will be proportionate with flavor.
Yeah.
But not all the time. And it's not a one, what is it? A one something fits all.
Yeah, it's not one size fits all.
One size fits all. Yeah. And I think that's this is this conversation, but that's not even to think about man, what about the roaster? The roaster can make the coffee taste worse than it should be.
Yeah.
And on the other side is something we've talked about a lot, is how finding a coffee from a producer that nobody knows their name, but dang, when you're cupping it and you're like, yeah, we could roast that the flavor out punches the value, how much we're paying for it.
Yeah.
I can't shake that Peru geisha.
I was just thinking about that.
That we cupped, and I was like, this is the most classic geisha, and it's freaking amazing.
Yeah.
And what? It's from Peru?
Yeah.
And when I saw the price tag, I was like, what?
Yeah.
This is how much you're buying a good solid pink bourbon.
Yeah.
And this way out punches its class.
Yeah.
That is also definitely a variable that could get in the way there. So there's a lot of variables there, but yeah, in general, it's this is just food for thought. If you're buying coffee, don't think that, hey, just because it costs more, it's worse. Just because it costs less, or just because it costs more, it's better. Just because it costs less, it's worse. There's plenty of coffees that will cost a little less, but dang, they're fantastic. Yeah. And there's coffees that'll cost $10 more per bag that'll be 2% better.
Yeah. I think one of the names that comes to my mind is a coffee that we have right now, Sebastian's Coffee. That is Sebastian's Coffee are a big name for the most part. But that doesn't mean that all of his coffees across the board are the same.
Yes.
I was listening to Christopher Fair and Lance talking about processing. It was a great conversation.
Great video.
Yeah, great video. But the interesting thing that Christopher said that I was like, I've never thought about it this way. But he mentioned that what the roaster does is he polishes. That's it. And to me, that just hit deep. And that was that's such a well put such a well put phrase. Is like there are names that people are just buying coffee. Yes, it's still flavor. Yes, but it's also trust built with the producer, and you're paying for that trust because that producer will execute whether the coffee has a flavor note caramel or not. You're like, that's the caramel I want to taste because Sebastian produced this coffee. And I think there's that element as a roaster. Like what we're doing is, I mean, as cheesy as this sounds, we're reflecting the nature of that name. We're taking that, we're saying like, hey, when we cup this, when we were sourcing this coffee, we saw value in this. And when we say we saw value, it's like, yeah, you and I have a preference, and we're like, yeah, we like this coffee. But we also know that, hey, our demographic or the avatar that we're trying to reach, they will also resonate deeply with this coffee. Whether it's a caramel flavor note or it's like, the most exotic tropical fruit, there is a resonance to that flavor profile and the price that we're purchasing it to, and then the price that we put the MSRP on that bag based on how we polish it, to use Christopher words. So there is all of that at play. And I do think there is value in when you're choosing to buy a coffee, at least for me, when I'm scrolling down September's page or any other roaster that I'm looking to buy coffee from, I am looking at the name of the producer. And I am paying for the flavor of the coffee because that equates to the quality that I'm willing to pay for. But I'm also paying for the fact that I trust what this producer creates. It's not, for lack of better words, it's just not, you said it well. It's not a one size fits all. It's not like I'm just scrolling down and saying like, hey, I want to pay, $20 a bag for a blueberry flavor note.
100%. I mean, I do the same thing. If I'm seeing a producer that I'm familiar with or that we've roasted before, man, I feel much better buying that because I know the quality of their work. And same with roasters as well. You tend to go back to the roasters that you've enjoyed and had a good coffee experience with. So anyways, folks, thanks for listening to another episode. If you have any thoughts about coffee pricing, bags, drop in the comments below. If you're not following the Spotify or Apple, you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button on YouTube as well. But friends, thank you so much for listening. And as we always say, remember, reflect what's good.